Ready to start. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Zoe, Events Executive at Brand Finance. Thank you for joining our third and final webinar of the Brand Finance Global Forum 2020 series in association with Tata Consultancy Services, where we'll be exploring the topic, the value of design to businesses. We are pleased to be joined by over 130 people from all around the world today. I will shortly be handing over to David Haig, CEO of Brand Finance, who will be opening today's event. Just a very quick note on housekeeping. The format of the hour-long webinar today will follow 3 10-minute presentations by our guest panelists following a 20-minute Q&A session. You could submit your questions to our presenters through the Q&A facility. And just to let you all know, we will be sharing a recording of the webinar after the session today. We also kindly request that on leaving the webinar, you fill out a brief survey providing feedback that will be helpful to develop our future webinars in the series. And finally, I would like to encourage you all to engage with us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter using our hashtag BFGlobalForum. And now I'm very pleased to hand over to David to introduce today's sessions and our panelists.
Thank you, Zoe. Well, first of all, I'd like to say welcome to everyone who's here. And thank you for attending the 3, if you've been to all 3, or if you're just here for today, welcome. It's been a very unusual year. Normally we have our Brand Finance forums in April. Normally they're all day. And normally we pick up a topic where we say the value of the particular thing to brands and to business. And so we've had many different things over the years. We've had sustainability, we've had digital, and we felt this year that really it was time for design, because design is the underlying fabric, the foundation for all brands. And it covers a whole range of different things, from user experience to the fundamental product to the way in which it's presented. And over this series, instead of having it on one day, we've broken it into 3 separate sessions, which really reflects the way one has to do things when one's doing it online. And I think we've had an exceptionally successful run of 3 sessions with 3 speakers in each. And in the first one, we looked at the value of design to society. Then we looked to customers, and today it's about business. And I'm pleased to say we've got 3 very interesting presenters joining us today. Deborah Dawson, who's joining us from the Business Design Association. Rosa Taus from Taus Jewelers from Spain. So a very interesting perspective from that particular industry. And Dennis Keskin, who's the Director of Brand of Porsche. Their full CVs are actually in the pack, so I won't go further, but needless to say, they've got a lot of experience, and I'm looking forward to the different perspectives on this very important subject. And finally, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming. And I will now hand to Fabian Bergfeld, the CEO of W12 Studios. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to introduce everybody on this panel. So I'm Fabian, I'm the Managing Director of W12, we're a design studio of TCS. I want to sort of start off by really making a case for design, because we will talk about design. And I think, and I'm fully convinced that we are living in the golden age of design, and here's why. I think design today, in the era of the 4th industrial revolution, is at a similar crossroad where design maybe has been 100 years ago or so at the 2nd industrial revolution. And back then, just like today, technology has really changed how we manufacture, but also how we relate to each other. So the key role of design back then, as it is now, was to, on the one hand, create very efficient, or the most efficient design flows, manufacturing flows, to create products that are usable and simple. But design has an additional role, and this, I think, also goes hand in hand with technology, because technology changes how we relate to each other, how society operates. And I think we are all acutely aware of what that actually means in today's times, as most of us engage with each other through technology, as we are in lockdown or more at home than we are outside. And the role of designers is to really create brands, or apply brands, or use brand to give products purpose and meaning that unites people. And that is very important. So in that sense, the value of design is always grounded, from my perspective, on the one hand, in creating usable, desirable products, but also give brands meaning and find ways to unite people. So today we finally arrived in the digital first era, where we can really fully leverage what technology can offer us, digital technology, data, AI, all these things are at our disposal. The customer, the employee, friends and family, we're connected 24/7. There's an abundance of data, and it's a task of the designer to connect the dots to create meaningful customer journeys and create delightful, simple experiences for everybody. From my perspective, there are three elements that are really needed to make that a reality and allow design to really reap its full value. On the one hand, it's important for brands to have a solid foundation. And a solid foundation means to really have principles that are clearly understood and meaningful, that you can stand for and that you can apply through all elements of how you actually communicate with your customers across all channels. The second part in the digital space is you need what I like to call a design language. And a design language is just like any language, your ability to communicate with your customers or anybody for that matter. And just like any language, it constantly evolves and changes. So as a designer, you need to set it up so it can change and can evolve, so you can communicate meaningfully across a very fragmented digital ecosystem, which has many screen sizes and many platforms. And the third element that I think is necessary is you need to have a vision. You need to know where you're going. You need to know where your team is going, where your company is going, where you take your brand, so you can bring the customer along on that journey. And you can also unify your team, which is most likely distributed across many different locations and many different disciplines. So I think all around, the value of design is to help organizations to embrace change and be ready for the digital revolution. And since technology creates transparency for everybody, and most importantly for the customer, this needs to be a sincere effort where essentially you know what you're doing for yourself, you know what you're doing for the individuals, and you know what you're doing for society and what for everybody. And that is essentially what I coin to be the value of design. And I'm looking forward to a more broader discussion now with this panel. So to get us started, I'm very pleased to introduce Deborah Dawson, the CEO of the Design Business Association. Thank you so much.
Apologies for the slight delay there. Screen not doing quite what I was expecting it to. It's great to be with you here this afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here this afternoon. I have been head of the Design Business Association for some 15 years. And as you can imagine, the value of design is kind of right up my street. It's what we champion on a regular basis, both into business and into government. And so it's a subject that is very close to my heart. You can read all about me in the stuff that was sent through, so I won't go into that just now, but just really get to the meat of this, this presentation. The other thing is that I can quite happily talk for hours on the subject, so I'm just making a note of the time that I started to make sure that I don't rabbit on for too long. Most of you, and I've had a quick look at the delegate list and the businesses that are represented, I'm guessing most people don't know that typically businesses are out by a factor of 4 to 10 on what they spend on design annually. So I'm going to repeat that again. Most of you will be out by a factor of 4 to 10 on what you spend on design. So if you were to set that as a challenge into your next board meeting, I can guarantee you everyone will undervalue, put a much lower price on it. And the reason that's the case is that it's one of these things that gets spent or money is spent on across all sorts of different areas of the business. If you don't have a central design resource as a business, what you tend to find is there's a bit of it in marketing. The communications guys might have the brand piece. You might find that there's an R&D team who've got the product, the industrial part of things. You may find that there's another team who deal with the packaging or the point of sale. Corporate communications have probably got the website and so on. So you can see that actually if you start to peel back the layers of what's happening across a business, given all of those channels that Fabian just described into the market, then design is touching all of these things. And it's just that as businesses, what we've done is we've channeled our spend into the channels on which we've founded our businesses. So that's an awful lot of money, typically, that is being used to shout out about your brands into the market. And generally, it's pretty uncoordinated. So left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing. Now, if you were to carry out a simple audit within your business and you were to look at the headcount involved in that work and the budget, I can promise you that you'll probably sit there wondering why on earth you haven't had someone responsible for that amount of money in your organization before now. So if there's one task that I would have you go away and do after today, just go and have a quick audit, back of the fag packet type stuff, on what you think you might be spending across all of those functions, and just look at where the responsibility for that lies. Where is the accountability for that in the business? Now, we're going to be hearing from some very interesting companies this afternoon. And I would argue that if Porsche can't articulate the value of design, then we're in some serious trouble. So I'm looking forward to that. And what I've done today deliberately is I've decided to explain the value of design to a pot of yogurt. It's probably something that we grab out of the fridge and we eat without giving too much thought to it. But if you're the person who manufactures and sells that product, the fact that they bought yours is clearly going to be an important issue. So let's just assume we're all in charge of a yogurt company today. Your product's in decline. You're facing tough competition from imported brands, and they're all eager to appeal to this increasingly sophisticated and demanding consumer. Marketing is not going to get you out of that hole. You need to increase sales, you need to gain market share from competitors, and you might have to do this without cannibalizing, say, a sister brand in the market. So we're making this a nice juicy problem for the marketing team here. Now, to do that, you need to build in brand benefits above the regular stuff that you see in the market, and you've then got to illustrate that to the consumer. Why is it worth paying more for this pot of yogurt over the one it's sitting next to? And then you might want to extend that range in a year or two. So again, Fabian was talking about the design language. What we mean by that is actually, are you designing in the values to what you're doing that will allow you to create or extend the life of a product or create a broader range? And in fact, this was a real brief. This was a brief that was given to a design agency. And the results were that they increased sales by 37%. They increased market share by 3.6% for the brand. And in fact, the proposition was so successful, it outgrew market growth by 17%, which actually means they grew the yogurt category. So I would argue design can do that for a business. I don't think there's any other function within a company that can. What I'm not saying is that design does this alone. You've still then got to surround that with all of the marketing support. But actually, you have to go back to the core product and what it's saying and what it's doing in the market. And what I'm saying is that actually, if you go back to that core function, that's where you build in the value to your brands, which allows your marketers to unleash all of their skills to get you that penetration into the market. You turn in those results, you'll soon find that you become the finance director's best friend in the business. And of course, you're measuring all of this. You're looking at where you were before, and you've measured the impact of what you've done. You now know what success looks like. Now, if it doesn't sound like a design brief that you've ever given out, then I think you're letting your designers get away with blue murder. And there are design agencies that react to these types of briefs. They understand what design effectiveness is really about. They understand your business, And those are the types of designers that I think you need to be working with. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that no self-respecting designer should embark on a challenge of this or any other sort within your business without understanding the business context for it. But they are masters of desirability and usability. So the next time you ask them to change the design to green, think again. It's a bit like asking your heart surgeon to use a saw instead of a scalpel. Now, I talk about design being the yeast in the business mix. Normally at this stage, I would throw up an image of a lovely loaf of bread and I'd say to everyone, what was the key ingredient that made this possible? And most people get it. We've been watching British Bake Off. It's the yeast. You've got to have the yeast in there. Otherwise, it doesn't come out looking great. But the thing about yeast is it's got to go in early and it has to be allowed to prove itself. And what most businesses do is they think of design as an afterthought. It's okay to give the designer the problem. You don't have to solve the problem and then bring the designer in to implement whatever idea it is you've had. And in fact, I would argue that if you want to see transformational change within your business, you have to bring the designers in much earlier. If you don't do that, the chances are that you've diagnosed the problem, you've asked them simply to implement something, and quite frankly, you may as well just go to whoever's around the corner to deliver that for you, because what you're not doing is engaging full potential of what it is that they could do for you. So if you want to unleash design in your organization at a transformational level, it's done from the top down. It's not done from the bottom up. You have to bring designers into those strategic conversations. What does the outcome need to be is the other question I think you should go away with today. So let's not be focused on the output. What's the outcome you're looking for as a business? Is it that you want to be here in 10 years' time? Because that's a very specific type of brief. Or a yogurt pot that gets you to next year. And let's face it, after the year we've all had, there's no shame in those being the outcomes that you're looking for from the work that you're commissioning at the moment. But there are designers that operate in all of those spheres. And so the next challenge, of course, is who do you work with on this stuff? And I would argue that most businesses don't spend nearly enough time vetting the people that they work with, probably, I would have thought, across all sorts of areas, but quite specifically within design. And I think if you're going to do this well, what you really need within your organization is a design champion. Now, what I'm not saying is go and find yourself a chief design officer. It's appropriate for some businesses, it's certainly not appropriate for others. But someone has to have authority for design within your business. Think of all that money being spent all over the place. So if that's all brought together, ultimately, who is it that is going to be responsible for maximizing the return on that investment? Now, I would argue that marketing will fight for marketing when the chips are down. Typically, they will not fight for a greater design budget. And so you need to think about who has design's corner in your business. So that's something else that I would make a note of today. And it's not always the obvious answer. Johnny Ive was at Apple for 5 years before things started to change. Now they changed when Steve Jobs walked back into the business. Steve Jobs had the design authority. What he did was to create the environment for design to flourish. Very different things. So it's too hard to measure is what I hear from people, rubbish. What designers do this type of stuff? There are very experienced designers that do this type of stuff. And actually, usually the other question is around cost. I would say you put as much as you can afford into these type of efforts because they guarantee the future of your business. Plenty of case studies on the DBA website. There's all sorts of stuff about how to buy design. And of course, we're happy to help you in any way that we can. I'm going to leave it at that and hand back to, actually, I'm not going to hand back to anybody. I'm going to hand on to Rosa Tous, who is our next speaker. And she is corporate vice president at Tous in Spain. She's a graduate gemologist. I had to really practice that one. Today she represents the brand Tous as spokesperson and in establishing relations and partnerships for that brand in its growth and consolidation. Now, they're an important player in the segment of affordable, luxury, fine jewellery. Creativity is at the core of their business, along with innovation and design. And I can't wait to hear what she has to say to us. Many thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. So yes, as you said, Design is all around of what we do, and design is in all the product that we sell. Actually, as you said, we are a Century Fine Jewelry Young Spirit design brand, and the design is everywhere. As I said, I want to share with you that being creativity is one of our major and one of the pillars of our values. So creativity is all around the company is, and what I want to share with you is a little bit of, let's say, the most common and the highlights of design in our company. Next slide, please. As I am the corporate vice chairwoman in Tous, and I am also a board member of the Foro de Marcas Renombradas in Spain. This is I'm here because of them. And as you said, we are one of the most important players in the segment of affordable fine luxury jewelry. And nowadays, we are in more than 50 countries with around 700 stores with 4,000 people working around the world. Next slide, please. This is a family business. This is my family, my sisters and my parents. It's a very feminine company as well. And as I told you, this is a centenary brand. Can you please go to next slide? Okay, just to, I'm not here to explain all the 100 years of life in Tous, but I want to just highlight, let's say, the most specific and important moments where the design has been important in our company. And we begin at the beginnings. It was my grandfather in 1920 that he began with being as a repair workshop apprentice. And he married my grandmother. They had one son. My father married my mom, and it was my mom that at that time, that it was not very usual, she begins to work at the jewelry store. As my mom always said, the jewelry is something very, very nice, and specifically for women. It was in the 70s when she realized that the women, their customers were beginning to answer, and they were beginning to look for a new ways of using jewelry. Specifically, they were looking for new designs of jewelry. They wanted something very more easy to use from day to night, and in some way, a jewelry that they didn't have to wait that their husbands give them to her. So that was one of the, let's say, more highlights and the more important points at that moment in the 70s, when my mom did this little, let's say, jewelry workshop to personalize and to begin to design her own jewelry pieces. And it was in the 85 when the Tous beer was born. The Tous beer is one of the most iconic icons that we have. And as my mother always said, an icon is not made by the brand, it's made by the people. The Tous beer nowadays is a symbol that is exhibited at the Design Museum of Barcelona since 2017, which is also a very special moment in our story. Next slide, please. During these first periods of time, we were growing and having new stores around Spain, basically. It was in 96 that we began to go abroad. But what was very interesting is that mainly the whole collections that we were selling at our stores were our own designs and were designed by my mom and her team. It was in the 2000 when we realized that we had the chance to build a brand. And to be a brand, we need to open with our product portfolio. The first of these pieces has been the handbags, that has a very relationship between jewelry, because it's also made by novel materials and handmade. So bags become, and they are nowadays very important in our portfolio. After that, there were sunglasses, fragrances, and other accessories. With the next generation on board, my sisters and I, we had the goal to build this jewelry brand. being Toes a tender, fun, and young-spirited brand. And our design was the driver to achieve all this goal. Next slide, please. In 2008, most of you can remember that it was the biggest economic crisis that became around the world. And it was the time that my sister, Alba, took the charge of being the new chairwoman of the company. And at that time, also my sister Marta had to took the charge of the design department. At that time, things were kind of going strange because the situation of the country and the situation around the world has been very, let's say, impacted by the crisis. But that we always said a crisis is a big opportunity sometimes. And the creativity has been one of the major, let's say, drivers at that time, because we began to design pieces in bilaminate silver and gold, and also in silver with gold coated called vermeil. At that time, that was a great chance that we can give our customers in order that can still get some pieces of jewelry that they can afford. Being as an affordable fine jewelry brand, that was, I can say, a key moment for our company. At the same time, it was in 2013 where we also designed the new store concept that really allow us to give a new perspective of seeing jewelry within our customers. At that time, the most, let's say, common things and let's say more traditional jewelry stores are the ones that are related with a place that you have to sit down and wait until somebody is helping you and waiting for them to bring the jewelry in order you can prove it or see it. What we did was to display mostly of around the 70% of our product, and in places where the customers can just take a look at them, and of course are being assisted to in order to prove and whatever they needed. So that was also a key moment for us. Next slide, please. In 2015, we had something in mind that we have our centenary ahead. So we begin to work on the build to last moment. So keeping with the spirit of innovation around all the creativity in our product and of course in our brand. So at that time, we developed a lot of, let's say, projects linked to sustainability and with the celebration of our centenary. We developed, as part of our commitment with the jewelry handcraftsmanship, what we are calling the Toes Jewelry and Artisans School in 2018. And in addition, we also have developed an archive and museum to make the world known about our legacy. Where we can show all the creativity and all of the design. We also did a very special project where we call 100% Toes, 100 beers for 100 years, where we have a collaboration with three let's say, very important design schools with the students in the world and some artists, where they had to, let's say, interpret our iconic beer, and that all these designs were shown in all our 700 stores around the world. So you can see that the design has been very important, and it's very important in our company, specifically because we are selling, let's say, design items, design pieces of jewelry, where the bear is one of the most important, let's say, iconic themes that we have. And even for that, let me finish with this presentation with a little video. If you can go next, please, because we also did the commentary. And in this documentary, we call it oso. That means bear in Spanish. So if you can just see this little video. Thank you very much. And now let me introduce Dennis Kensin. He's Director of Brand Management at Porsche AG, designing luxury auto businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosa, for your kind introduction. And also hello and welcome from my side. Yeah, I know, if we work for a car company like Porsche, of course, we do think and discuss design a lot. And before we start into the presentation, I'd like to make one thing clear. And if we go to the next slide, you will, I think, understand very quickly what I mean. This is a car that I have tried to design. So although I do work for a car manufacturer, I'm definitely not a car designer, but a marketing guy. And I think if you look at that picture, we will all agree that it's probably better off this way. But even working in marketing, as I said, I think thinking about design, the design of our products and how we approach the market, in my point of view, is pretty essential. So when you are renowned for a physical product like we are, I think it's pretty obvious how important design is for Porsche and always has been. And on the next slide, I have brought with me, I think, a really interesting quote from Ferry Porsche, our founder. And he said, as you can see here, to be truly aesthetic, truly timeless, any design must be functionally justified. And I really love that quote because, as you can see with the 3 words that I marked in blue, there is really a lot of content in that little phrase, right? So we talk about, for instance, something being aesthetic, so the emotional quality of the design in front of us. We talk about things being timeless, so we almost allude to a, let's say, cultural quality of the product we're discussing. And then, of course, the functional, the practical aspect is also something that always needs to be there in order to make a design truly successful. Now, I like that quote, as I said already, and I will use these 3 angles to talk about design. I will revisit them during my presentation to, talk a little bit about how the brand Porsche interacts with that idea of design. Now, if I talk about design as a Porsche representative, and we can see that on the next slide, there is no way of not talking about our most iconic product, the Porsche 911. You see on this picture Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, who has been the designer of that car. And when the car was first being launched in 1963, it was already pretty special. But today, and again, the next slide, I think shows that very nicely, it's pretty unique in the business to have that lineage, that kind of, 8 generations, the same expression of that design, always evolving, always being up to date, but still having that, again, timeless quality. And of course, we are immensely proud of that. And, the attitude that we have just seen in the quote of Ferry Porsche, that is really what has led us to, creating that very unique place in the automotive industry. Now that, if you like, almost biological, organic evolution of the design, again, shows how important it is for Porsche to think about this. And if you would look at our, internal brand construct, and that's the next slide. So the way that we define our brand internally, you can see that design is a really integral part of how we understand ourselves as a brand. As you can see here, just as a little explanation, we have Driven by Dreams as our brand purpose in the middle of our brand concept. And then we have 8 brand values. And as you can see, design is one of these values and extremely important for the way we express our brand. Now, if we go to the next slide, I've been asking myself for today's purpose, can we deduct any principles from this, from a brand perspective? What is behind that? And I could also say, what is the role of design in the relationship between our brand and our customers? And I think there are 3 points that are really interesting and critical, especially in this time and age, as we discussed today several times, with the behavior of our customers changing so quickly. And I would quickly like to introduce these 3, in our point of view, important elements to you. On the next slide, we can see the first one. And actually, the picture shows our current product lineup. You can see a 911 and a couple of other models as well. And I hope you will agree, the interesting and important thing here is that every of these vehicles is instantly recognizable as a Porsche. In the front, the white car is a Porsche Taycan, our first fully electric vehicle. And although you have all that, brand new technology in it, and although it looks, I think, very contemporary, you will hopefully agree it's also looking very much typically like a Porsche. And that, that constant way of expressing our brand, I think, is really important, because for the consumer, it creates that sense of belonging. That again touches a little bit with this idea of timelessness in the quote of Ferry Porsche. And I think it's extremely important for brands like ours that we have the quality to connect to our consumers with that sense of belonging, with that sense of, substance. That's the first important principle from a brand perspective. On the next slide, we see the second one. And I think there it's really about evoking a sense of purpose. I think in our daily lives, we are all constantly exposed, to a lot of challenges. The pace of our lives has increased. And I think consumers, while they look for good design, they are not really ready to have any compromises in their daily lives just because the design is not thought through. So having that functionality, that sense of purpose, in our point of view, is really essential to create the necessary relevance to be truly a brand in the middle of the life of our customers. And then the third principle on the following slide, although we take so much pride and time to design our products, of course, we also have customers who want the car to be their car. They want the car to be a very unique expression of their view on the world. And of course, they want a car that is unlike any other. Now we have, a great range of possibilities for our customers to customize their vehicles. And I think it's really fair to say that no Porsche that leaves the production line is exactly like the one before. And we have actually calculated that. And on the next slide, you can see the figure. I do hope that I have my zeros right here, but it should be something like 32 quintillion ways to configure a Porsche 911, which is, of course, a mind-blowing figure. And I think there are some combinations in there that might not be, 100% advisable, but still for our customers to be able to take the design that we do and then give it their personal touch to make it exactly the car they want is extremely important for the way that we do our business. So I think as a summary of what I just said, and we can see that on the next slide, if we ask our current customers about the reason that they buy Porsche, they are coming to us, you can see that design is one of the most important reasons. I mean, performance will not surprise you, that the brand is important will not surprise you, but design is up there. So we do understand that thinking about design and how people perceive our design is pretty essential for the success of our business. And that is not only true for the current customers, but I think it's also true for the next generation, the future customers. On the next slide, I think, we've done a lot of research for our future customers, looking at Gen Y, Gen Z, and anything that comes below that. And I don't know if you would agree to that assessment, but from our perspective, we think for these future customers, the value of design will only increase, because they will value products with a high quality of design. And if you think about, the quality of design we're discussing, I think, again, it goes exactly right back to the quote of Ferry Porsche. They will look for something that emotionally attracts them, something aesthetic. They will look for something that fits their lives, something functional. And they will look for something, that has a deeper meaning than a pure product itself. They will look for something timeless. And this is the way that we've always looked at design from a Porsche perspective. And as you can see on the final slide of my short impulse, this is also the way that we want to look at design and its evolution in the future. And this is why we will continue to celebrate the way that we do design. So thanks for your attention. And I hope I could give you a little insight into how we deal with this topic from a brand perspective. And now I do look forward to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all our speakers today. As we mentioned, we'd like to now provide the opportunity for all of our attendees to participate in a Q&A with all of our panelists. Please do submit all your questions through the Q&A facility, which should be just at the bottom of your screen. And to moderate today's discussion, I'm very pleased to introduce Adam Newell, who's founder and managing director of VI360, which is Brand Finance's specialist visual identity management unit. Hi, Adam. Are we ready to start with the first question?
Hi Zoe, thank you very much everybody for joining. Yes, some wonderful presentations there, really give us a glimpse into their own aspects of design. I'd like to actually start off with a question of my own, if that's okay. And it strikes me as curious that even though the TOOS brand and obviously the Porsche brand are two very different brands, they actually seem to have quite a lot in common. Long history of quality products, innovation, and design evolution. But my question to the panel is, how do companies with a strong brand heritage like this use it to both retain existing customers and attract new ones? So maybe I can ask Rosa to join in first with an answer. Rosa, are you there?
Rosa, if you could just unmute your microphone and turn your camera back on, that would be perfect. There we are.
Hello, I'm sorry. I couldn't finish to hear. I'm sorry because my English is not so good. I couldn't finish to hear the question.
Sorry, the question is how, given that both TOOS and Porsche both have a lot in common in terms of their heritage of innovation and design excellence, but how do you use that to both retain existing customers and attract new ones?
Well, that's the key. As we also Dennis told us, the future is now one of our main let's say goals to achieve and to contact with the young customers in order to keep let's say selling illusion to them. In our case, because we are in the affordable segment, I think we have three main drivers. One, of course, is sustainability. I think this is one of the main drivers that young people are focused on. Then digitalization as well. We really need to be where our customer is and in all platforms where our customer wants to find us. And of course, about communication, I think it's important to give them the storytelling that we want to explain and try to reach all our audiences in all places and in all moments where they are. They can be physically or digitally. So I think these three big drivers are going to be key, or are key actually.
Great, thanks. And Dennis, your view of attracting your very strong and loyal customer base, but also keeping it fresh and relevant to attract new ones.
Yeah, I think, Adam, it's a really good question. I think the key is really, if you think back of that shot that we showed about the different generations of the 911, not to be, fixed in what you've done with the past, but to do the right amount of interpretation of elements and then to almost deliver them in a contemporary, in a fresh way. And by that, not alienate the current customer base because you're still building something that is totally true to the original promise, but always finding new ways of delivering that promise to our audiences. And I think, especially, as I said, for our electrical vehicle, the Porsche Taycan, I think we're very pleased also, if I look at the public reception, how people manage to both see the car as a typical Porsche, but also get the feeling, yeah, but it's done and interpreted in a new and contemporary way. And I think that is our ultimate goal if we are in the market of attracting new customers.
Great, thanks. And Deborah, I don't want to leave you out. So your view on this balance between heritage and the new customer? I
mean, I think it's kind of easier, isn't it, for the businesses that have been around a long time, because it's naturally there. I think the challenge for a lot of brands that are established today is that you're having to build those values in from the very beginning. So I think that idea of just being able to start something up and build that level of heritage into something is actually very difficult to do, but it's a requirement. We've heard enough from the speakers today about how sophisticated the consumer is, that they really want to understand what the motives of any business is when selling them their products or services. So I think for me, a lot of businesses, I think, of old were naturally born with the right intentions, if I can put it that way. And I think the challenge for startups in this day and age actually is to establish a business whose values speak to the consumers that they're trying to attract.
Thank you very much. So here's the next question. Can I start with you first while you're on screen, and then we'll go around the group. The question relates to actually to do with acronyms. So what do you think about the use of acronyms as opposed to the use of the full name, and how would a company balance those two design requirements in order to build equity in terms of customer recognition and recall?
Okay, so you're asking the person who trained as an industrial designer but never did it. So my job is to represent the industry, and you have got, I would throw this at Fabian. Okay. You've got a great designer here who could answer that much more eloquently than I can.
Well, exceptionally well done there. I like that. Fabian, it's over to you.
I will do my best to answer that question, which is a very interesting question. I would love to know a bit more context around that question.
The context is quite simple. It's put to us by somebody from the Mission for Essential Drugs and Supplies, which the acronym being MEDS, quite an appropriate acronym, of course. But I guess the question behind that is, do we build equity in the full name or in the acronym?
Well, I think the most important part is to create something that's ownable and that is authentic. So that could be the acronym, it could be the full name. I mean, I would argue it's probably easier to build equity with a full name, because its acronyms sort of very quickly could take on a life of its own. One of the key things that we always push for is to essentially pick your battles, so to speak. We call them hero moments when we do create design platforms or design languages for our clients. And those are the things that you own and that you can bring back to your brand, that essentially as your product changes, there are few things, and there should only be a few things. There shouldn't be too many, because that dilutes the message. But those few things you really need to own. If you don't own your few things, it's very hard to build brand equity. So, and I think in generally speaking, if you can own an acronym, if it not suddenly somebody else, it becomes sort of a universal term that everybody owns, it's fine. But if you cannot own it, you should really invest in ensuring that you own the full term. That's my 5 cents.
Right, thank you very much. In that case, I'd like to link this follow-up question, which we have is, so we're talking about building equities in an acronym. How important is it for companies to build a distinctive or memorable motif? For example, obviously, the Porsche emblem or the bear for TOOS.
And
that's
I think it's about believing in the design, and also making people to love it. Making people love it, it's not so easy, because it's something that it's very, let's say, intimate from the people. But if you are realizing that people are loving it, and this first time when you are beginning to show it, you think that it's something that they can let's say, appreciate, then things can be more easy. In our case, for example, when we first did the first bear designs, we only had one store. At that moment, our customers bought it and used it. At the second step, it was when we opened a second store where the bear was there again, and there were new customers that were let's say knowing the bear and having the opportunity to buy it. And then it was the third store in Barcelona, so that happened again. So once we realized that the bear was something that it was very desirable, we really thought that we had something in our hands important, because maybe it was not the first intention when we designed it, because it was designed within a collection of different, let's say, designs and items and shapes. But once we realized that the bear was the most desirable, then it was when even the brand, we began to promote it, to redesign it, and to make, let's say, him be in more other jewelry designs, and even in bags and in other categories of product. But as I said, in our case, Rosa Oriol, our founder, my mother, she always said that the icon is not made by the brand, it's made by the people. Although the brand, of course, can care of it, push it, and of course, be aware of let's say, redesign it again and again. But it's a matter of people.
A question from one of the delegates joining us today to follow up there is, since the birth of the bear some 15 years ago, do you know how much value the bear, the brand, the sub-brand of the bear, if I could crudely call it that, has added to the TUS overall brand?
Well, in our case, we do have that bear in the Design Museum here in Barcelona. It's our hometown. This is a great recognition for ourselves, and it's a great value also for our brand, because that represents that it has been something that become popular, that become well-known for everybody, at least in our community and in our country. Is something that more or less everybody recognizes. This is also why in our documentary we wanted to make this kind of thing with a bear, because there is a lot of people that loves it and also people that hates it. But the thing here is that it doesn't make indifference to people. People gets to know it, and they decline in some way. I love it or I hate it. I would like it to wear it. I would never want to wear it. So it's something that also for that, it's very important. And it's something that has added value to our brand.
Okay, thank you. And to Dennis, if I'm trying to link all these questions together, which are coming in thick and fast from the panels, but can I say, how does Porsche tailor its core offer to the diversified tastes and preferences of your global market?
I think that's a really cool question. It's also a question I could answer in very long length. I think if I try to boil it down to the most important thing, we talked today about design, and it's true that our models, they don't look vastly different from country to country, and that is because I'm convinced that in our demographic there are some preferences for design that are pretty universal, and I also think that our customers expect from us not only to be the exact replication of design tastes in their country, but also to be someone who inspires them with their own vision in terms of how a certain product should look like. And this is why, from a global level, I think the way that we approach this design of our vehicles is working pretty well. Of course, when you go deeper down in the aspects of individualization that I just briefly mentioned, there are, in terms of colors, other trim choices, there are significant changes and differences between different geo regions. And yes, of course, we have to cater for that to stay, again, relevant, to be functional in the sense that our customers expect that from us. And that is a production challenge, of course, but one that we are, taking on very gladly, because we, of course, are very honored by that universal love for our products all over the world.
Thank you very much. I think we've got time for a great question from our host, David. Hey, David, do you want to ask your own question, or do you want me to paraphrase it for you? If you're there, David. Well, while he's trying to join us, I'll put the question. And
There now.
Oh no, David, there you go. Well done. Why don't you put for your question for Deborah?
Well, it was really for all the delegates, actually, all the speakers. Deborah's speech was really about the fact that boards of directors need to take design more seriously and look for ROI and demonstrate a business return. I suppose the question really is, as a general rule, is this a big problem with industry, that companies are not taking design seriously, or organizationally, or in terms of investment? And would the other parties like to comment on that?
Businesses, I think businesses are, because I think business understands that ultimately, to be competitive, they need to have a better product or service in the market than the competitors have, because, and I forget who it was who coined this one, only one of us can be the cheapest. So if you're not going to compete on price, you have to be competing on something else. And I think there's been enough in all of the presentations that we've heard today to suggest that, you know, if you're selling a car, what you design into that car that makes the difference between whether it sits at one end of the market or other. So I think the challenges for boards is that I think typically people thought originally that if you just made something and tried to sell it, people would come and get it. And the nature of the consumer is that they've changed. They aren't happy just buying our stuff anymore. They want to understand the purpose with it, which it was created, and to some extent, they're. I mean, in Rose's case, they're wearing the values of the business, you know, on their fingers or around their necks, so it says a lot about the person. So I think the challenge into boards is to get them into that position where actually design is a part of the DNA of the business. There are some businesses out there that probably think this is a really peculiar conversation because the idea of separating design from the organization is anathema to them. We just need to get more businesses to that point. If they want to stay in the market and they want to stay competitive, then they need to change their attitude towards design. In the interest of time, I'll stop there.
Dennis, you'd like to come in on that?
I think a lot of what Deborah just said is totally true. And of course, as I said, I'm not working in the design department at Porsche, so I reserve my judgment on the point of view of my colleagues there. But I think in general, as I tried to indicate, I think our decision takers are really very much aware of the importance of design. I think, by the way, that's true for anyone operating in the car industry, because the visual impact of our product is certainly something that directly and immediately connects with our consumers. And I think that's why we are also, as I try to say, in our history, in our brand makeup, and the way that we position ourselves, always try to make sure we pay enough attention to the value of design, and always try to be acutely aware of that as well.
And thank you very much. And Rose, I guess being the family business that TUS is, the connection between the board and the design team is a very direct one.
Yes, it is, especially because, as we said, and as it happens, the same with Porsche being in two very different sectors, the design is key in what we do. The design is key in the product that we sell. The design is key in the, let's say, moment that the customer takes the decision of buying one item instead of another one. So we really have to have that in mind. And our design, let's say, department is very, very strong in our company. And it's also, let's say, very loved in our company as well, because are the ones that are dealing with the, let's say, very close relationship with the customer. So it's nothing that it has any doubt in the company. So design is very important for us.
If I can just maybe add one footnote here, I think it's a brilliant question, because I think what I see, having worked in this space for 30 years, is unquestionably a strong desire for everybody to embrace design. And I think in a world where you have physical design, it's the value is maybe easily understood when you go to digital design, digital only and digital first. because it's quite intangible and is constantly changing. Just think about, for instance, what's happening in the media and entertainment industry, where you used to have vinyl and amplifiers and records, and now you just have a streaming service with constantly everyday different features, everyday different things. And I think what companies continuously struggling is to find the right mix between technology, engineering, and getting the thing to the market, and design, which is in a way the race against time. And I think that's where rubber hits the road very often in the boardroom about the right choices to make. And there's a lot of education that still needs to be done to make those right kind of choices, because it's truly a new territory for everybody when you go into digital first, and it's ever expanding and connected.
Thank you very much. I would just pick up on that in terms of of how we describe design, because we're also talking about an experience, and that could be the design experience of a piece of software, or it could be the design experience of how comfortable the seat in my Porsche feels, or how heavy the necklace feels around my neck. That's also the experiential part of design, which I think is somehow beyond the purely visual design that we often speak of.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think it goes maybe, it's a nice follow-up question to maybe what I previously tried to highlight, is the experience that one now has with a product, being a physical product, extends seamlessly in the digital space. So whether it's a physical and you have the sales journey and it's a pre and post sales support, whether it's about sort of a car is a perfect example, a car is connected, you have entertainment in the car, you have wayfinding, you have all sorts of things. So I think the experience in designing all elements of it and making it consistent, that is the biggest challenge done nowadays.
Yeah. Indeed.
I think there's a very simple example that I would highlight, and it's the retail sector, the food retail sector. Your experience of walking into a retailer has got to feel like the experience of the groceries that get delivered to you. And the interface of the site that you've used to buy that stuff, and the familiarity with the person who's actually unpacking the stuff on your doorstep, and the quality of the vehicle that they've just driven up onto. They're all design decisions. And if what you experience on your doorstep doesn't feel like the experience in store, there's a disconnect. Something's gone wrong. What the company's saying to me, it extends to the advertising you see on television from them at Christmas, to whether these things are wrapped or not when they arrive at their homes. So, and that's just a relatively straightforward one, as Fabian said, that those journeys now are getting ever much more complex, and getting that consistent across all of those channels is absolutely critical.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much for that, and thank you to all of the panels. With that, I'm going to hand back to David to summarize and bid us all a good day.
Yes. Well, I would also like to thank Fabian, Deborah, Rosa, and Dennis for speaking. Interestingly, the reason we set this up is because we had an a priori assumption that design was a bit of a Cinderella business. Sorry, someone tried to ring me. That generally the a priori idea was that design is underrepresented, underinvested, and generally not taken seriously. Perhaps, unfortunately for our a priori theory, we invited people who come from companies that do take design seriously and from the organization that promotes it. So, but you see, my observation over the last 25 years of brand finance, and next year is our 25th anniversary, is that when you go into companies, you frequently get people moaning about their discipline not being taken seriously. In a lot of English companies, engineering is one of those, where they think engineers are underpaid, under-recognized, and nobody takes any notice of them. In all companies, I think marketeers and communicators moan because they want more budget. And the one that tends to be quite silent and doesn't really moan, but in some places is not, in my opinion, is not taken as seriously as it should be, is design. And in some respects, the companies that do it well are the ones that stand out, you know, like the companies we've had here today. And for example, companies like Dyson. The only reason that Dyson ever got to be was because he was a great designer and went to Hoover and said, would you like to buy my design? And they said, no, that would mess up our factories and spoil our finances. And so basically, he had to go off and set up his own company to make his innovation work. If they had been listening, they would have, if their accountants hadn't been in charge, they would have junked their previous designs and they would have started using his, and they'd be a lot richer by now, I'm sure. And so I do genuinely think that a lot more companies should upgrade the holistic view about design by some form of representation on the board. But I think in one of the earlier presentations, in the previous sessions, one of the speakers said something like, well, most designers just like getting on with what they're doing. They don't really want to sit on the board having arguments with accountants about stuff. So I do think there is a slight existential issue around the design issue, but certainly in your companies, you got it right. So you probably hope that other people don't get it right too, because it would make life more competitive. But anyway, I think that whole discussion is a very interesting one, and exactly why we organize these events. And I'd just like to end by once again saying thanks. I'd like to say thanks to our sponsors, World Trademark Review, the Foreign Press Association, the Museum of Branding, and of course, TCS. And just to give you an advance warning that normally we have our annual forum on the 1st of April, which is our corporate, perhaps somewhat ironically, is our corporate anniversary. We won't be doing it on the 1st of April next year. We pushed it forward to June, by which time we hope that the COVID crisis will be over and we can do it in person. And I sincerely hope that many of you who are here today can come and join us with another lively session, because today has been extremely interesting and very thought-provoking. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And once again, thank you so much to all our speakers today. We've overrun slightly, which I think is a great sign of a very engaging session. Thank you so much for all of the questions that came through from our audience. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. I think we can all agree we could have continued the discussions way through to the afternoon. All our webinars are available to view online on our Brand Finance YouTube channel. So do please be sure to catch up on our previous sessions as well. I'd like to encourage you all to complete the survey that will pop up at the end of this presentation too. In the meantime, please do stay tuned for future events at Brand Finance. As David mentioned, we are celebrating our anniversary on the 16th of June. So watch this space for future information. And also we are planning our launch of our Global 500 in January on the 26th, as it's currently planned. Stay tuned for more information. Any other questions or information on events, please email events@brandfinance.com. Thank you once again to all of our speakers and for all our guests for joining us today, and hopefully reconnecting with you all soon in the new year. Thank you.